Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Anadugo. I'll be presenting to you. My presentation is a research that I looked into about self-injury behavior affecting adolescents and young adults. Um, I decided to take this course because this particular research because of something that's been home. Basically, in my work experience, I deal with a lot of families that I have to place into permanent home because they're homeless, and because of those homelessness, there are different factors that come across it: trauma, domestic violence, and sometimes suicide is connected to it, and mental health, drugs. And I really wanted to go detail to it when I had the opportunity to do a research. I took opportunity to ask a survey uh, and did a lot of research to just really go into the issue and figure out why this is this or what's the situation around it. So I hope this presentation will be some sort of knowledge and understanding for most people that want to know about self-injury behaviors. So self-injuries behavior affecting adolescents and young adults, it's big within the age of 10 to 34. 12 million individuals have self-ideation. It's 3.5 making plans. It's always within the young age. It started with a young age, and sometimes when I studied and read it and asked a few questions, I saw that the trauma of what has happened in their early age, or maybe divorce, the parents leaving, or maybe parents experiencing drugs or prison, has affected this young children at that age, and that's when those behaviors start. Self-harm, understanding self-harm is really key to understanding it. Found out that self-injury as a coping mechanism was ways that they can cope. Whatever trauma they're going through, the overwhelming feelings, they feel that injuries, self-injuries, is a way to cope. And they might not necessarily kill themselves or having commit suicide, but they just literally cope with those mechanisms. Self-injury is often cyclical. Many people use this self-injury as a primary way of coping. They go out of periods. They had a case of one of the a client I knew. She was in and out, and she was a case whereby she can be fine in one day or a period of time, and later weeks she's back into it again. So it's always in and out the cycle, and it comes back and forth. There's another danger again. They hide. They don't want anyone to know about it. It's very common. They hide these injuries or make it a place where you cannot detect it in hidden areas of their body. Self-harm. This is very key because if you look at if you look at what I saw the self-harm here, looking at how the diagram connects, you see that the concept of this self-harm is just to determine if the behavior continues. You see a case where are they immediate consequences? Yes. It goes down to, is there suicide intent? If it's a yes, it goes to suicide attempt. If it's a no, it's a non-suicidal self-injury. So I set up this way to give you an analysis of what usually will happen to see what self-harm really does. The basis of this is to basically see what are the lasting effects, and if there are no consequences, what usually will happen if it's a yes or a no. So this diagram literally gives you a good example of what will happen. What are the lasting effects? You give an example of maybe a thief, the adrenaline rush that he always, or he or she will have every time he does that without being caught. It's almost the same adrenaline rush for some of this people that have these behaviors. If they're not being caught, they continue. And in this diagram, you can see here, harm with are they immediate consequences? If there is a no, the harm with non-immediate consequences. So it's a diagram that really gives you a sort of like an holistic approach of the consequences of if they're being caught or not. What is a suicidal ideation? This is one of the things, is basically the thoughts of wanting to harm yourself or engage in suicide-related behavior. And what is self-injurious behavior? It is aimed towards inflicting pain of the body without the means of trying to end one's life. So this is what we'll talk about in the beginning. This is what we need. Most of these people need help because that is they think it is their way of calming the situation down, and they tend to cut themselves, tend to do sort of injury in a way in their bodies to they don't try to end their life, but they always go a little bit further and further. And that's why we need help. And that's why they need help. And this is a time to call help. Now, what is a suicide attempt? This is when the attempt is to end one's life, but the attempt was not completed. Sometimes they might not have the SIV, which is a self-injuries, which they don't want to hurt themselves. But there's a case where they have the suicide attempt. They want to. And what usually will happen is that they might not complete it because maybe they have part of them that don't want to do it, but part of them really want to do it. Victims can try various methods to end their lives, such as hanging themselves, jumping off a bridge. There have been many attempts of suicide, but sometimes it's never completed. What death by suicide? Death by suicide is the victim's intent to die. And if you look at this graph here, you show that Russia, South Africa, the United States in the fourth. It's funny that Russia is part of it, and the reason was because of the breaking down of the USSR. It was really massive in the time of the war when the USSR was broken into different countries. Some of the men who had weapons, who were in agriculture, had intents due to no hope, the economy, and some of them lost loved ones. So Russia, the connection to it, yeah, it's so funny because of the war going on and invasion in Ukraine. You maybe be thinking, okay, there might be more suicide in Russia. Yeah, I believe there is. But United States is in the fourth, and this is really concerning because of the way the graph shows that most men commit suicide. Now we go into research questions. What are the long-term effects of the self-injury behaviors? Can early interventions help with reducing suicide gestures and future attempts? Can introducing early interventions or preventive tools help reduce suicide rates among adults or young adults? Yeah. So this is what we'll be researching, and we hope we'll go further with it. The hypothesis which I took was that I had to reduce the self-injury behavior. Can I reduce it, this SIV? Would it decrease the suicide gestures and attempts for the younger adults? This hypothesis I used was it will be used to examine if reducing self-injurious behavior can help with reducing suicide ideations and attempts in the later years. So this will be determined using literature review and past studies. And the research method I used was available in different special groups. I took a lot of literatures and readings, especially from the university library. And what I came up with, the data reviewed will be from the previous literature review. I did from about 15,682 potential articles came out. 5 were very included to discuss and review the outcome amongst young adults, adolescents especially. There was so much to talk about. That's how much, when I wrote the number there, 15,682 was the number that I came up when I searched. Sampling design. This is another area that was vital. In my time of researching, I came up with at least three major, you can see there. The first one was Amanaro, etc. in 2017, Jennifer Power and Shelley Brown in 2010, and Thomas Paul in 2002. I emphasized the first one because she really went detailed, Amaro's in 2017. What she did in a conceptual framework, she identified research to help with reviewing the self-injury behavior and the long-term effects. And the methodology she used was articles published between 1998 and 2016. She considered those articles between those period of years. And what an analysis came about is that she identified the behavior was common among adolescents between 12 to 14. And as I said in the earlier, my age was between 30 to 34. So after I took sampling designs from from the top 3 I just put on this slide here, I came up to a number in the early slide that I gave, between 10 to 34. Sometimes it goes back into their early ages. But Amaro 2017 broke down a number between the age of 10, between the age of 12 and 14. So this sampling design has really helped me because I could learn from what ways they make their methodologies and what analysis of results and conclusion they came about. And those ways, those samples I used, those 3 key samples I used, gave me a good understanding to be able to write this paper. The data collection instruments, most of these data collection instruments I used were ways to publish, to learn, to find the key documents of the data that I use here. So what I did here was to find the suicide probability scale. It was important that I had this data collection instrument because I could use it to find the probability scale. The data collection instrument was a way to determine the measures of well-being and the coping behavior. So this suicide probability scale was developed in 1982. It has been used by most researchers and most medical researchers too. And what they did was to come up with this scale as a 36-item self-report measure that helped to assess suicide risk. So they use a 4-point scale to ask questions in to see what scores they can get. So there were 36 with 4-point scale, and they provide scores for 4 clinical scales, the hopelessness, figure out how hopelessness they have. There were various questions they were asked to see or determine some sort of points. As I said, they used 36-point questions with 4 points to identify, okay, how hopeless are you? They ask questions from how they deal with life in a daily way and how they deal with life with other people. They check out that hopelessness. What they check is their suicide ideation and what are the thoughts? Do they have any attempts of suicide? If this happens, if they don't have their way, what thoughts come in there? If you ask me that question, I will hope is not have any suicide ideation. But for some reasons, they do have those suicide ideation. So those questions are asked in different situations, in good and bad times. And they ask also their self-evaluation. How do they see themselves? Do they see themselves as a good person? Do they see themselves as someone very productive? Those questions and their hostility, how angry? Do they get upset easily? Do they get irritated? Those 4 questions, the hostility, their self-evaluation, the suicide ideation, the hopelessness, will come up as a data collection instrument to figure out, okay, how can we measure this? Do we measure the well-being and the coping behavior? So the data collection instrument has been vital in the last 30 years or more, almost 40. You can see it was an instrument that started in 1982. And we look at the surveys. The surveys was taken in ways to help provide information about the age, ethnicity, and self-harming behavior. This specific survey I used was to gauge the severity of depression, which is conjunction with an individual wanting to harm themselves. Consent forms, I use a consent form. This consent form is some sort of way to find, it's used for various reasons, basically, different concepts. Legal, ethical, and administration. It's became the primary paradigm to protecting legal rights of patients and guiding. So I use consent forms to basically to just have various reasons to different contexts to see how things are, how I can apply it into a research method by knowing, okay, am I going to support the patient, define goals, know how they, the background, where they live and what they do. So the consent form I use here, we used to utilize and ensure the participants understand the study process and its impact. And the graphs and charts I see here, if you look at it, the simple data derived from a previous study that documented the effects of dialectical behavior therapy in adolescents who exhibit SIB. SIB is the abbreviation of self-injury behavior. And you look at the baseline to week 19, from week 19, it goes all the way to week 20 to week 71. The red graph sign is the enhanced usual care, and the blue is the dialectical behavior. Excuse me. And you see the time interval, how this has increased as it goes up. It shows here that the frequency between the baseline in the week 19 in the early stages is over 20. And here, the usual care and the dialectical behavior is below 10 in the week 19. So you can see the time interval of the graph and charts. This was taken from one of the research methods, the fresh sample design, showing us the self-harm episodes of what usually happens. And you see that sometimes in the baseline in the week 19 is high. And in week 20 to 27, it goes down. But if you hear my explanation and how sometimes this is cyclical, it goes up and down, as I explained to some of my clients, and how sometimes it's higher in the early stages and comes lower in the later stages. So there are different self-harm episodes that happens between those times. The higher the enhanced usual care, there's more, the higher the behavior they have. And so you can see the process that happens and the time interval, how it increases and how certain behaviors happen in the period of time. I mean, I had to expand the week between week 19 and all the way to week 20, all the way to week 71. But it's still there. The self episodes are going up and down, and usually starts early, but reduces with time. Okay, I'll just be trying to conclude and trying to go into more of the conclusion and seeing the political views. How do I see it? How do the conservatives see it? And how does the liberal see it? And the first one is the political conservative. According to psychology study today, most of the political conservatives feels mental health is untreatable, curable. Their views on people with mental health challenges as weak as blame them. What I took from there basically is that the conservative feel that, if they can deal with the issue from the family, whatever the state of the mental health is, that it's their fault. Certain decisions that they have made in the past, or maybe it's related to families. It was a very concerning idea or decisions or how they saw it. But what they really came up about here is that they feel that it's something that it's on their fault. They need to deal with it. It's a personal, natural course of issues. They see it as a form of diseases. It's like any diseases that happen to anyone, just like mental health. Mental health is a disease. And they feel that, okay, just like any sickness, like cancer that happens to someone, yes, you might have some sort of affection towards that person, but sometimes it is what it is. And they feel that that's something that is part of the family or the individual that went through it. So they have a negative stereotype surrounding mental health, that they see it as something that it's a natural thing that has happened due to different causes. And it's their own view to see that it's likely and willing to associate with people with mental health. They don't want to associate. They don't really want to talk about the mental state because they feel it's a personal thing or something that's something that you have to deal with yourself. And they remain very socially distanced. So they don't really have a solution per se to mental health, but rather they stay away. They think, as I said, they think it's uncurable, untreatable, and it's something that has been derived from personal decisions made in the early stages of life. Whereas where we have the political liberals, they reduce negative stigmas surrounding, and they are more inclined to rally around individuals who challenges mental health. I think the liberal had various mental health counselings and mental health programs, especially. They feel that, yes, has happened due to one issue or the other, but they associate and advocate for those with mental health challenges. They put those families involved into mental health counseling, especially in my organizations. We have various programs that help families find a way out, give them a hope by leading them to different programs that will help them connect with it. I say that because most of the liberals and conservatives that are connected to that constituents are liberals, and they have come up in their election period of time, and they've come up with the idea that mental health is a serious matter and has affected many families. So yeah, their solution basically is to bring in awareness, which they have done. They have produced various mental health programs. They have produced ways to help families, especially then go to the roots of the issues, especially with domestic violence and any issues with the adolescents and the young age. Set up programs that will get them involved, or prevention programs that will see to it, hey, this is the reason why you're doing this. Get help. So I'll say in a nutshell, in distinguishing the liberal and the conservatives, the liberal are more aligned and they associate and advocate for the mental health or any issues where that we get in SIB, which is the self-injurious behaviors. They try to come up with different ways and different programs that will cause those families to prevent from it. Whereas the conservatives stay away from it completely and feel that it's an incurable issue, and it was always is derived from decisions they made in the earlier past, in the past. But my research-based opinion, based on what I have researched and studied and experienced, because as I said, in the early stages, I work with a lot of families who have experienced SIB. But when examine both parties, the political side of it, the conservatives, the liberal, my own research indicates more information that is shared, the more I provide awareness and education on the issue at hand. My own thing is to come up with ideas, programs that will support families. I believe most of those programs are coming now. I will more go on the liberal side by bringing awareness, interventions, and programs to keep reducing the suicide injurious behavior, which is the fact can reduce future suicide attempts from individuals. And also look at it also from the conservative side to see that what is the cost for it? How can I set up if it's a family issue, if it's a trauma issue, how can I go into the roots of the issue? Yes, I could come up with preventions, I could come up with programs. I support that as the liberal does, but if I'm continuing in doing that, how can I go into the roots of the issue? What is the root of the issue? It could come up with different factors, economic issues, the family issue. How do I address families? And it is a very difficult situation because most of the people have to make their own will, especially decisions they have to make in getting involved with things that they shouldn't get involved with, drugs. But the awareness will be highlighted in the roots of the issue, in the beginning of the issue. How can I address the family? How can I address the economic that will make it easier? Because sometimes there's economic issues or life generally that causes a lot of people to get really sad and traumatized. As I said, if you take the story about Russia, the high rates of suicide after the USSR is something that is unavoidable. It is what has happened. And we might not, and here in the United States, it might not be a case of war, but it be a case of maybe economic issues, a family breakdown that's caused traumas to these young families. And sometimes it's something that can be dealt with in the root. But I have a balance of the issue, but I'm going in the line of more of the liberal side that now that the issue is very difficult to avoid because things really happen, I will go deeper into preventing those things, coming up with different programs. Awareness is key because some of these young people, they don't even know what they're doing. They don't know that they're actually harming themselves. Yeah, so awareness is important. Bringing it into classes, bringing it into studies, into the classroom, uh, putting out flyers, and letting them know that they can be helped. So I hope this presentation was helpful based on what I've researched. It's something I really want to go more into and learn and maybe be an advocate also for many families who have suffered. Thank you for listening.